Amelia Thompson sat at her desk, staring out the window of her corner office. The city skyline, once a symbol of her ambition, now felt more like a looming shadow. She had come so far, top of her law school class, recruited by the most prestigious firm in New York, and now on the brink of a senior partner position. But with all that success came a price, one she was beginning to feel in every corner of her life. Mark, her husband, used to be her biggest supporter. He was successful in his own right, running a thriving business and always pushing her to aim higher. But then, he got sick. It started as something small, a fatigue that wouldn't go away, but soon it became clear that it was something much worse. Doctors called it a chronic condition, something that might never go away. As his health declined, so did his business, and suddenly, the financial burden of their lives fell entirely on Amelia. At first, Amelia tried to juggle it all. She worked long hours, putting in the effort needed to secure the promotion, while also taking care of Mark. But as time went on, the weight of everything started to crush her. Mark wasn't the man he used to be. He was no longer the confident, successful businessman. Now he was just a man struggling to find purpose. And Amelia found herself growing resentful. She didn't want to be the only one responsible for their future. She didn't want to come home every night to a sick man who couldn't contribute. She didn't want to admit that she felt trapped. At work, things were even more cutthroat. Vanessa, her colleague and biggest rival, was always one step ahead, always ready with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Vanessa had no distractions, no sick husband, no personal struggles. And it was Vanessa who made sure Amelia knew it. "I heard Mark's not doing too well," Vanessa said one day, her voice dripping with false concern. "I can't imagine how hard it must be to balance everything. You're a real trooper, Amelia. But you know, sometimes personal distractions can affect career growth." That was the moment Amelia began to see her life differently. Vanessa was right, wasn't she? Mark was a distraction. How could she focus on her career when she was constantly worrying about him? And if she didn't give everything to her work, if she didn't stay ahead, Vanessa would swoop in and take what should rightfully be hers. Amelia began to pull away from Mark. She spent even more time at the office, working late into the night and avoiding coming home. When she did come home, the silence between them was deafening. Mark tried to talk to her, tried to tell her about his doctor's appointments or his new medication, but Amelia barely listened. She had started to view him as a burden, a weight around her neck dragging her down. One evening, after another long day at the office, Amelia came home to find Mark sitting at the kitchen table, looking more defeated than ever. "We need to talk," he said softly. Amelia sighed, dropping her bag on the counter. "About what?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "About us," Mark replied. "I feel like I'm losing you. I know things are hard right now, but we can't just ignore what's happening." Amelia stared at him, her mind racing. She knew what he wanted, but she couldn't give it to him. She couldn't be the supportive wife, the caretaker, the person who would put her career on hold to nurse him back to health. She didn't have it in her. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized she didn't want to have it in her. "I don't think I can do this anymore," Amelia said, her voice cold and detached. Mark's face crumpled in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I can't keep carrying this. You're sick, Mark. And I feel terrible for you, I really do. But I can't let your illness ruin everything I've worked for. I've spent my whole life building my career, and I'm so close to getting what I deserve. I can't throw that away because you're too weak to stand on your own." The words hung in the air like poison, and for a moment, Amelia wished she could take them back. But it was too late. Mark's face twisted in pain, not from his illness, but from the cold reality of his wife's betrayal. "I see," he said quietly. "So that's how it is." Amelia didn't respond. She couldn't. She turned her back on him, unable to face the broken man sitting at their kitchen table. Her mind was already spinning with justifications. She was doing this for both of them, wasn't she? If she didn't succeed, they would have nothing. Someone had to be strong. Someone had to keep moving forward. But as she stood there, staring blankly out the window, a part of her knew that the line she had crossed could never be undone. Amelia's decision to send Mark away haunted her, but she buried it deep beneath the relentless demands of her career. She told herself it was necessary, that cutting him off was the only way to secure the life they both deserved. But no matter how many times she repeated it, the nagging sense of guilt wouldn't fade. Work, however, offered a temporary escape. She threw herself into every task, staying late every night to prepare for the client presentations, meetings, and endless paperwork that came with her rising responsibilities. The firm was watching, and so was Vanessa. The pressure to prove she could handle it all felt unbearable at times, but Amelia was determined to make it to the top. She had sacrificed too much to turn back now. Vanessa, of course, didn't miss a beat. She continued her quiet manipulation, always subtle but effective in planting seeds of doubt among the partners. "You know," Vanessa would say casually during office discussions, "Amelia's been working hard, but it's tough to focus when your personal life is in such disarray. It's admirable, but not everyone can balance it all." The implication was clear, and the more it happened, the more Amelia began to realize Vanessa wasn't just a rival, she was playing a calculated game. Every comment, every sly remark about Mark's illness, was meant to undermine Amelia's credibility at the firm. But instead of pushing Amelia to confront Vanessa, it fueled her anger toward Mark even more. He had become the symbol of everything that was wrong, the obstacle in her path. And Vanessa was right there, capitalizing on that weakness. At home, the apartment was eerily quiet. Without Mark, there was no one waiting up for her, no one asking how her day went, no one sharing their life with her. It was what she thought she wanted: space, freedom, the ability to focus entirely on her career. But the emptiness weighed on her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Mark's absence wasn't just physical. It left a void she couldn't ignore, one that seeped into her thoughts no matter how hard she tried to push it away. She remembered how they used to dream together, how Mark would tell her about the future they'd build, the businesses they'd start, the adventures they'd have. Now, all of that seemed so far away, like it belonged to another life. One night, after another grueling day at the office, Amelia sat alone in the dark of their living room. She poured herself a drink, staring at the spot on the couch where Mark used to sit, laughing with her about their plans. She had convinced herself that sending him away was the best thing for both of them, but now, she wasn't so sure. Work wasn't offering the comfort it once did either. Despite her best efforts, the firm's leadership seemed to be leaning toward Vanessa for the promotion. Amelia had been putting in the hours, the results, but there was an intangible quality that Vanessa brought, a confidence, a charm, that Amelia couldn't compete with. And Vanessa wasn't above using that to her advantage. During one of their weekly strategy meetings, Vanessa's true intentions became clear. The partners were discussing a major client deal, one that Amelia had been heavily involved in securing. It was her project, her success. But as the conversation unfolded, Vanessa deftly steered the credit in her direction, praising Amelia's work but positioning herself as the one who had sealed the deal. Amelia watched in disbelief as Vanessa spun the narrative, turning what should have been Amelia's triumph into her own victory. The partners were impressed, nodding along as Vanessa talked about how she had brought it all together. Amelia wanted to speak up, to set the record straight, but she knew how it would look. Any protest would be seen as bitterness, jealousy, exactly what Vanessa wanted. After the meeting, Vanessa caught up with Amelia in the hallway, her expression smug but friendly. "I hope you don't mind," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I just thought it was important to highlight the teamwork aspect. You did a great job, of course, but the partners really respond to collaborative effort. You understand." Amelia's stomach churned with anger, but she forced a smile. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady even though her mind was spinning. Vanessa was playing a dangerous game, one that Amelia had no choice but to participate in if she wanted to stay in the running for the promotion. But as she walked away, the weight of it all pressed down on her. For the first time, she wondered if it was worth it. She had sacrificed so much already, her marriage, her peace of mind, just to be standing here, fighting for a position that suddenly felt more hollow than ever. And now, even that was slipping away. As the weeks went on, Amelia found herself spiraling. The guilt over Mark, the frustration with Vanessa, and the increasing pressure at work became an unbearable combination. She was losing control, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Every time she tried to focus on the future, on the promotion that was supposed to make everything worth it, she found herself thinking about Mark. About the life they used to have before everything fell apart. And the more she thought about him, the more she realized just how far she had strayed from the person she used to be. The turning point came late one night, when Amelia received an email from one of Mark's old business associates. It was short and to the point, a question about why Mark had disappeared from the industry so suddenly, and a comment that seemed innocuous but cut Amelia to the core. "I heard some unfortunate rumors about his health. I hope he's doing okay." Amelia's hands shook as she read the message. She knew, deep down, that Vanessa had something to do with those rumors. Vanessa had been manipulating more than just Amelia's career, she had been sabotaging Mark from the start. The realization hit Amelia like a punch to the gut. Vanessa had been pulling strings all along, not just at the firm but in Mark's life too. It wasn't just about undermining her career, it was personal. Vanessa had orchestrated rumors about Mark's reliability, planting seeds that had likely led to his business crumbling and his professional connections drying up. Amelia's head spun with the implications. How could she have missed it? Guilt surged through her. Mark had tried to tell her something was wrong, but she had been too focused on herself, too consumed by her ambition to listen. She had pushed him away when he needed her most, convinced herself that his illness and failures were his fault, when all along, Vanessa had been working to destroy them both. For the first time, Amelia let herself feel the full weight of what she had done. She had turned her back on the man she loved, shut him out when he needed her support, all because she had been too driven to see the truth. She had chosen her career over her marriage, convinced herself that it was the only way forward. But now, standing in the ruins of her decisions, it was clear just how wrong she had been. Amelia sat in silence, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. She had spent months justifying her choices, telling herself that Mark's illness had derailed their lives, that she was the only one holding everything together. But now, she saw it for what it was, an excuse. She had used his sickness as a scapegoat for her own ambition, letting Vanessa's manipulations twist her thoughts until she believed Mark was a burden. In reality, it was her blind ambition that had poisoned everything. Vanessa hadn't just taken her promotion, she had taken Amelia's perspective, made her see Mark as something holding her back rather than a partner she could lean on. The guilt gnawed at her, and for the first time in a long while, Amelia felt something beyond the cold, calculated determination that had driven her for so long: regret. The next day, she could barely focus at work. Vanessa's smug face, the partner meetings, the endless corporate maneuvers, it all felt hollow now. She had worked so hard for this promotion, given up so much, but standing at the precipice of success, all she felt was emptiness. Vanessa's betrayal had ripped away the illusion of achievement that Amelia had clung to. As the hours dragged on, Amelia found herself drifting back to thoughts of Mark. She hadn't spoken to him since the day she asked him to leave, and the silence between them now felt unbearable. She had been so sure of her decision at the time, convinced that separating herself from him would free her to focus on her career. But now, all she could think about was how lost she felt without him. That evening, after yet another exhausting day at the office, Amelia did something she hadn't done in months. She sat down with her phone and called Mark. The ringing echoed in her ear, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. But then his voice came through, quiet and hesitant. "Amelia?" he said, his tone a mixture of surprise and caution. She didn't know what to say. The words she had rehearsed earlier, the apology she had planned, felt inadequate now. She started, then stopped, unsure of how to continue. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke. "I'm sorry, Mark. For everything. I didn't listen. I pushed you away when you needed me, and I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest, the silence heavy with the weight of their broken relationship. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice soft but resolute. "It's not just about saying sorry, Amelia. You have to want to change. I've been through a lot, and so have you. But if we're going to fix this, we can't go back to how things were." His words cut deep because she knew he was right. Nothing would change if she didn't face the truth about her ambition and how it had driven them apart. "I know," she replied quietly. "I don't want to go back to that. I want to make things right, whatever that means." They talked for a while longer, the conversation tentative but necessary. It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. For the first time in months, Amelia allowed herself to be vulnerable, to admit that she had made a mistake. And while it didn't erase the damage that had been done, it was a step toward healing, a small glimmer of hope in the aftermath of everything she had lost. The next morning, Amelia returned to the office with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. Her usual determination to outperform Vanessa, to climb the corporate ladder, had faded. She still wanted success, but not at the cost of her integrity, not at the cost of the people she loved. During a meeting later that day, Vanessa tried again to undermine Amelia, subtly taking credit for her work on a project. But this time, Amelia didn't stay silent. She spoke up, calmly but firmly correcting the record in front of the partners. Vanessa's smug smile faltered for just a moment, and Amelia knew that the tide had shifted. She wasn't going to play Vanessa's game anymore. She had realized that some things were worth more than ambition. As the day ended and she packed up her things to leave, Amelia felt lighter than she had in weeks. The path ahead wasn't easy, and there was still a lot to fix. Her relationship with Mark, her place at the firm, her sense of self, but for the first time, she felt like she was making the right choices. Choices that wouldn't destroy everything she cared about. Amelia walked out of the office that evening with a sense of resolve. She had lost so much chasing a version of success that was never truly hers. But now, she was ready to rebuild. Ready to face the consequences of her ambition and betrayal. Ready to make amends, not just with Mark, but with herself. Amelia's life felt like it had come to a crossroads. After her conversation with Mark, she was left with the reality of the choices she had made, and there was no turning back. She had reached out to him, broken the months-long silence, but it wasn't enough. A few words weren't going to repair the damage. Deep down, she knew that a simple apology wasn't going to make things right. She had pushed him away, and now she was left to pick up the pieces, not just of her marriage but of herself. At work, things were no better. Vanessa's manipulations hadn't stopped. She continued to present herself as the perfect candidate for the promotion, using every opportunity to remind the partners of Amelia's distractions, and subtly questioning her ability to handle the pressure. But for the first time, Amelia found herself wondering if she even wanted the promotion anymore. It was what she had been striving for, what she had sacrificed everything for, but now, standing on the edge of achieving it, she wasn't sure it was worth the price. As she sat in her office, staring at the glowing screen of her computer, Amelia reflected on everything she had lost in the pursuit of power. She had alienated her husband, compromised her values, and let her ambition blind her to what truly mattered. She had allowed herself to become someone she didn't recognize, cold, calculating, willing to push away the people she loved just to climb a corporate ladder. And what had it gotten her? A promotion that felt increasingly hollow, a life that felt emptier by the day. The next few days were a blur of meetings and deadlines, but Amelia found herself going through the motions, no longer driven by the same intensity that had once defined her. She watched Vanessa continue her power plays, manipulating situations to her advantage, and felt a deep sense of weariness. It was like looking into a mirror of her former self, seeing the reflection of someone who was willing to do anything to win, even if it meant losing everything in the process. The partners were set to make their final decision on the promotion at the end of the week. Vanessa was confident, throwing knowing glances in Amelia's direction, as if to say that she had already won. But instead of feeling anxious or competitive, Amelia felt strangely calm. She had spent so long chasing this one thing, but now she realized that it wasn't the key to happiness. It wasn't going to fill the void that had grown inside her since she had pushed Mark away. On the day of the announcement, Amelia walked into the office with a sense of clarity. She knew what she had to do, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't driven by ambition or fear. It was driven by something deeper, something that had been missing from her life for too long: integrity. She wasn't going to let Vanessa's manipulations define her. She wasn't going to let the office politics consume her anymore. When the partners called her into the conference room, Amelia was ready. They sat across from her, faces serious, and began to speak about the decision they had come to. But before they could say another word, Amelia interrupted. "I need to say something," she began, her voice steady but firm. "I've been with this firm for years, and I've worked hard to get where I am. But in the process, I've lost sight of what matters most. I've compromised myself in ways I'm not proud of, and I've allowed ambition to cloud my judgment. That's not who I want to be anymore." The partners exchanged glances, surprised by her sudden declaration. Amelia continued, her words coming more easily now. "I'm grateful for everything this firm has given me, and I've learned a lot here. But I can't continue down this path if it means losing myself. I'm withdrawing from consideration for the promotion." There was a stunned silence in the room. Even Vanessa, who had been leaning back in her chair with a smug expression, seemed momentarily taken aback. Amelia met her gaze, feeling no animosity, just a quiet sense of resolve. She had finally made peace with her decision. The partners, clearly caught off guard, tried to persuade her to reconsider, but Amelia remained firm. She thanked them for the opportunities she had been given and left the room with a sense of finality. For the first time in months, she felt free. Free from the endless pursuit of validation, free from the toxic competition with Vanessa, free from the need to prove herself to anyone but herself. As Amelia walked out of the office building, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, that uncertainty didn't scare her. She had faced the consequences of her actions, and now she was ready to move forward, on her own terms. Later that evening, Amelia called Mark again. This time, the conversation was different. It wasn't just an apology. It was a real conversation about their future, about the possibility of rebuilding what they had lost. Mark was cautious, understandably so, but there was a softness in his voice that hadn't been there before. They weren't back to where they had been, but there was a glimmer of hope. And that was enough. In the days that followed, Amelia began to make amends, not just with Mark, but with herself. She reached out to old friends she had neglected, took time to reflect on what she really wanted in life, and slowly began the process of healing. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when she doubted herself, but each day brought a new sense of purpose. She no longer defined herself by her career or her ambition. For so long, she had believed that success was the only thing that mattered, but now she understood that true success wasn't about titles or promotions. It was about living a life she could be proud of, about building relationships that mattered, and about staying true to herself. Amelia didn't regret the choices she had made. They had taught her valuable lessons. But she knew that moving forward, she would make different choices, choices that reflected the person she wanted to be. And that was all that mattered now. As she sat in her apartment, the city lights twinkling outside the window, Amelia felt a quiet sense of peace. She had been through the storm, and while the road ahead was uncertain, she was ready for whatever came next. Because for the first time in a long while, she knew exactly who she was.